And are we ready to begin? Ms. Sherman?
Just a moment, please.
And are we ready to begin? Ms. Sherman?
Just a moment, please.
And are we ready to begin? Ms. Sherman?
Just a moment, please. I'm having an issue, so just a moment, please. I've done the lot. Oh shit! Everybody's. Whoops.
Only worldwide, bro.
I don't know what the heck's happening here. What's that? Oh, I did the live stream.
We're just doing.
Where's Zoom?
Yeah, you're supposed to. There you go. There you go.
And it's on live stream.
Yes, you are.
Perfect. Thanks.
Uh-huh.
All right, you should be ready to go. Mock trial is now in session.
Thank you. All right, then Switchgrass, you may present your opening statement.
Thank you, Your Honor. Let me know the very words of Blake Doncourt, the CEO of Lush Fertilizer and the defendant in the case before you today. Ms. Doncourt claims that if there were a single email claiming Lush was aware of the potential carcinogenic dangers of Drufo, a component of their fertilizer, to let her know. Today, you will hear evidence proving that multiple people did let her know about the potential carcinogenic dangers of Drufo, and that Ms. Doncourt knew that by baking its fertilizers, the dangers of cancer could be prevented. Your Honor, ladies and gentlemen of the jury, opposing counsel, this case comes down to the life of Dakota Weirs, the plaintiff in this case. Today, you will hear that Dakota was always an active member of her community. She volunteered at the local homeless shelter, spent time serving meals, washing dishes, and being as involved as she could with the less fortunate members of her community. But above all, even as a small infant, Dakota loved the piano. Dakota thrived on the piano. So she started taking lessons, and every spare minute not devoted to school or community service was spent studying piano theory. Piano became Dakota's life, and then she caught her big break with a full ride scholarship to Juilliard. Fast forward to today, you will hear evidence that Dakota can barely stand. Rather than playing piano and going to one of the most prestigious performing art schools in the country, Dakota is forced to combat swollen lymph nodes and frequent chills and chest pains. Now she fears she will not be able to join Juilliard again or even play the piano at all. We are gathered here today to determine whether Lush Fertilizer is responsible for Dakota Weir's case of non-Hodgkin lymphoma, a form of cancer that is not genetic and is contracted from exposure to harmful chemicals. From age 14, Dakota worked with fertilizers, the most notable being Lush Fertilizer. Dakota was then diagnosed with non-Hodgkin lymphoma. Today, you will see evidence reflecting that there were no warning signs on Lush Fertilizer's products regarding the risks of cancer. Dakota could not have known to protect herself from Lush Fertilizer. Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, today you will be shown that Lush Fertilizer was negligent. Negligence refers to the defendant failing to exercise reasonable care to prevent the product from creating a risk of harm to persons who might be expected to use the product in a manner the defendant might have reasonably expected. The defendant will tell you they had no knowledge of a duty to create warnings or adapt their product. Today, we will prove to you that the defendant was well aware. We will let them know. Dakota will testify today that Lush Fertilizer is responsible for her having non-Hodgkin lymphoma. She will tell you there were no warnings alerting her of a risk of cancer and that she used the defendant's product reasonably. You will also hear the testimony of Carson Durst, a former employee at Lush Fertilizer, who will tell you she attempted to warn the company of the potential carcinogenic dangers of Drufo. You will then hear the testimony of Dr. Casey Rogers, an expert witness who will show you she has studied the possibility of Drufo containing a carcinogen, and a test she conducted proving that there were higher incidences of non-Hodgkin lymphoma in those who used Drufo than those who did not. Today, the plaintiff has the burden of proof to prove by a preponderance of evidence that the defendant, Lush Fertilizer, was negligent and that the plaintiff should be compensated. To prove by a preponderance of evidence means to prove something is more likely true than not, even by just 51%. Should the plaintiff prove that the defendant, Lush Fertilizer, was negligent in failing to provide ample warnings and distributing a product that could be potentially harmful, then the plaintiff will have met its proof by a preponderance of evidence. Let me know. That is precisely what will happen today. The defendant was made aware of the potential risks of Drufo in its unbaked form on multiple occasions, but they still decided to prioritize their profits over the safety of their consumers, including my client and the harm their fertilizer caused to her. At the end of this trial, we will ask you, ladies and gentlemen of the jury, to find in favor of the plaintiff, Dakota Weirs, and that the defendant was liable on charges of negligence. Let them know Lush Fertilizer is responsible for Dakota Weirs' damages. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much. Ryegrass, you may proceed with your opening statement.
Thank you, Your Honor. Your Honor, opposing counsel and members of the jury, good afternoon, good morning, and we appreciate you being here with us today. I represent the defense in this case. Ladies and gentlemen, you will hear evidence that Drufo is not carcinogenic at all, and that Lush is not at all at fault. It was not their fault. Lush Fertilizer did not have anything to do with the non-Hodgkin's lymphoma that Ms. Weirs is suffering from. Ms. Weirs was an employee for Haven Landscaping in the years that they worked there as a landscaping technician. Ms. Weirs' primary task was spreading seed and fertilizer. They did not exclusively use Lush Fertilizer during the many summers of their employment. When they worked, they used to spread fertilizer inside places like office buildings and shopping malls, despite the warnings to only use Lush's fertilizer in outdoor places. Now, even though there is no risk of Drufo being carcinogenic, Lush still instructed that whoever uses their product should follow their safety guidelines, just to be as careful as possible. Ms. Weirs did not take the proper safety precautions when using the fertilizer. They were instructed by their employer to wear long sleeves, pants, gloves, and a mask, all of which they did not wear when using the fertilizer because it was too warm. After many years of this, they became sick. And prior to releasing their product, Lush had taken every necessary precaution to make sure it was not carcinogenic. Ms. Weirs used many different chemicals during their time landscaping and did not use proper precautions, which is why it was not their fault. Today, you will be hearing from 3 witnesses during this case. One is Blake Doncourt, the CEO of Lush Fertilizer, who will tell you how they were not aware of any risks associated with Drufo and how Lush found no carcinogens in their fertilizer. They will tell you that Lush is committed to environmental and physical safety and would never hide any of their findings from the public. You will also hear from Skylar Weirs. Is it okay? You will also hear from Skylar Weirs, a journalist who discusses how Drufo is good for the environment and not harmful. They will also tell us that because of Drufo, confirmed carcinogens do not need to be added to the product. Finally, you will listen to Dr. Devin Williams, head of the Lush Fertilizer research team, who will disprove the idea that Drufo can somehow cause non-Hodgkin's lymphoma and tell you that Drufo is safe. The plaintiff in this case holds the burden of proof. They must prove by preordinance of evidence, which means that it is more likely than not that Lush Fertilizer and Drufo cause Ms. Weir's non-Hodgkin's lymphoma. Even if the plaintiff has met that burden, because of the jury's instruction number 8, if the plaintiff, Dakota Weirs, failed to do something that reasonably careful people would do under the same or similar circumstances to protect themselves from claimed danger created by the product, then the monetary damages can be reduced by the percent at which the plaintiff was at fault. Ms. Weirs got unlucky. They do not deserve to have the terrible disease that they do, but it is misguided to blame Drufo and Lush Fertilizers for this tragic misfortune. This product is safe and did not contribute to Dakota's cancer. It was not their fault. Once you have been presented with all the evidence of this case, you will find that Lush is not at fault and rule on the factor of the defense. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Switchgrass, you may call your first witness.
Our first witness is Miss Dakota Weirs.
Thank you. Good morning. And you may, good morning to the witness, and you may begin your questioning.
Good morning, Miss Weirs. Please state your name and spell the last.
Dakota Weirs, W-E-I-R-S.
Tell us why you filed a claim against the defendant, Lush Fertilizer.
I was diagnosed with non-Hodgkin lymphoma, and I believe the cause was Lush Fertilizer. Because of this, Lush has ruined my life and stolen my future. I want the company to pay for what they did.
Thank you, Miss Weirs. I'm sure it's difficult for you to be here. Let's take a step back into how this all started. Tell me about yourself. How old are you?
I'm 20 years old,
Where do you live?
in Colorado.
Tell me about your family.
I'm really close.
Objection, relevance.
A response, please.
This information is offered to give a background on the main client of the case.
And reply.
Why is this relevant to why Dakota Weirs has non-Hodgkin lymphoma?
It's
Sorry. I'm interpreting the reply as a rhetorical question, and the attorney will be allowed some leeway to ask and obtain some basic introductory facts so that we may be acquainted with the witness. But this line of questioning should not take up much time.
okay. Thank you. Your Honor.
So I should say overrule.
Tell me about your family.
I'm really close with my parents and was really close with my grandfather, but I'm not very close with my twin sister, Skylar.
Let's talk about your life prior to your illness. What were you involved in during high school?
I was always a very active member of my community. I volunteered at charities and was a member of my school's National Honor Society and the president of my school's student government.
Did you have any hobbies?
Piano. Piano was my life.
How did you get started playing the piano?
Ever since I was little, I would go pound my hands on the foot pedals of my grandpa's piano. And after he died, I started to play it because it made me feel closer to him.
It sounds like piano became a big part of your life. How else did you continue your hobby?
I played in recitals and won competitions. I was even offered scholarships and was even awarded a full ride scholarship to Juilliard.
That's incredible. Did you end up going there?
No, I ended up having to turn it down.
Why did you have to turn it down?
Before I was supposed to leave, I started to feel sick all the time and had rapid weight loss. I was fatigued and had chest pains and chills. And after going to the doctor, I was diagnosed with non-Hodgkin lymphoma.
Why do you believe that you got sick?
I believe that
Objection, improper lay opinion.
Response, please.
This information is offered to give a reason of why the court is assembled today.
Okay. Counsel is invited to ask additional questions that might help the jury understand where the witness obtained the information that informed her of how she may have become ill.
Should I continue?
Yes, you may continue.
Okay, thank you. Why do you believe that you got sick?
Oh, I'm sorry. Let me interrupt for just a moment. So the invitation is essentially to lay a foundation, the source of the information upon which the witness is relying for the answer to the question that you just asked. Foundation comes first. So if you want to lay that foundation first, then you may ask the next question. Why do you believe you became sick?
Okay. I'm assuming we're connecting Lush fertilizer to non-Hodgkin lymphoma. How did you connect those two?
One time when I was at home on the couch after a serious bout of depression, I saw a news story about Lush fertilizer. Someone had leaked documents that proved that Lush had been negligent and lied about the safety of its products.
How did you come in contact with Lush fertilizer?
I was a landscaper at Heyman's Landscaping, and I started working there when I was 14 and continued for several years.
So I guess I'll ask it now. Why do you believe that you got sick with non-Hodgkin lymphoma?
Because of Lush fertilizer and its main ingredient, Drufo.
Let's go back to connecting Lush fertilizer with non-Hodgkin lymphoma. Once you saw the news story, what did you do?
I immediately contacted my dad, and then I contacted my boss at my old work to make sure that no one else would use the product. And I also asked to see if he had any old labels from it, just to be sure that Lush was indeed the product that I used.
Can you please turn to Exhibit 1? Let the record reflect that the opposing counsel has a copy. Your Honor, do you have a copy?
I do.
Ms. Weirs, can you please tell the jury what Exhibit 1 is?
Exhibit 1 is the label of Lush fertilizer as I remember it.
Does Exhibit 1 fairly and accurately resemble the Lush fertilizer exactly as you remembered it from your time at Haven?
Yes, this is exactly how I remember it.
Your Honor, at this time, I offer Exhibit 1 into evidence.
Is there an objection?
No.
Then Exhibit 1 will be received.
Thank you. What information is on the label?
It has its ingredient list, which includes Drufo, a few hazards, and what to do if you get it in your eyes, as well as a few safety recommendations.
Did you follow the recommendations, the safety recommendations?
I didn't follow them too closely. I was a teenager and didn't think about the consequences of my actions. But if I had known that Lush could have caused my cancer, I would have followed the recommendations much more closely.
Did anyone let you know that Lush could cause cancer?
No, no one told me that the side effects.
Objection, hearsay.
Can you please repeat the question?
Did anyone let you know that that Lush could cause cancer?
And reply to the objection.
This information is offered to know whether the defendant had any knowledge of cancer and Lush being connected at the time of her use of Lush fertilizer.
Reply.
How could we, sorry, let me rephrase that. This is hearsay because the witness is testifying to what somebody else told them.
Okay. While it is the case that the question calls for the witness to testify regarding statements, it sounds like statements that other people who are not here to testify, information that those people gave her, it doesn't sound as if the information is that the answer to the question is being introduced for the truth of the answer to the question, but rather for the witness's state of mind. So for that reason, the objection is overruled.
Thank you.
So you should probably repeat the question.
Okay. Did anyone let you know that Lush could cause cancer?
No, and it was listed nowhere on the label.
Let's talk about more reasons that you could contact non-Hodgkin lymphoma. Is there any reason why you think Lush fertilizer caused your illness?
Since non-Hodgkin lymphoma is environmental and not genetic, I immediately thought of my twin sister, Skylar. While we are not identical, we basically participated in identical activities growing up. other than my job at Havens Landscape. And I believe that if I had contracted it from another environment that I was involved in, Skylar would also have my disease.
Let's talk about Skylar. They're a witness to the defense. What are your thoughts on that?
I can't believe my own twin would stand against me.
Why do you think Skylar would take a stand against you?
Although we are twins, we've never been particularly close. And now Skylar works as a freelance writer and is a server at a restaurant. Skylar is a talented writer and has written extensively on the safety of Drufo. Skylar even has a series in a magazine. However, Skylar also has written about all sorts of articles about UFOs, flat earth theory, chemtrails, anti-vax culture. Skylar will write anything for the right price.
How is your relationship with Skylar?
Objection relevance.
Response, please.
This information is not offered for the truth of the matter, instead to show Skylar's mindset and bias as she's a part of the case today.
I'm sorry, I thought I heard that the objection was a relevance objection. Is that correct, counsel?
Yes.
Oh,
So did you wish to reply to the relevance issue?
yes. It's relevant because the witness, Miss Weirs, has a close, or not a close relationship, but they are in fact related. And so the witness does have background on what Skylar is thinking.
Okay. And so relevance is about whether or not the evidence has a tendency to make a fact more or less probable than the fact would be without the evidence. What is the fact that this testimony will help the jury find more or less probable?
We're trying to show Skylar's mindset and bias as she's called to be a witness.
Is there a reply?
How is that relevant to Miss Dakota Weir's and her knowledge of her disease?
All right. So the court might normally express some concerns about the one witness expressing an opinion regarding the credibility of another witness before that other witness has testified yet. But under the circumstances of this particular proceeding, court will overrule the objection.
Thank you. How's your relationship with Skylar?
Skylar and I were never particularly close. She now works as a freelance writer and as a server at a restaurant. Skylar is a very talented writer and has written extensively on the safety of Drufo. Skylar has a series in a scientific magazine. However, Skylar has also written all about UFOs, flat earth theory, anti-vax culture, and chemtrails. Skylar will write anything for the right price.
I'm sorry to hear about this. Let's circle back. What are you asking the jury to do today?
I want Lush to be held accountable for my lifelong illness.
How much monetary compensation specifically are you asking for?
While no amount of money can ever make up for the pain that this has all caused me, we are asking for $10 million.
Thank you, Ms. Weirs. No further questions.
Thank you. Will there be cross-examination?
Yes, Your Honor.
You may proceed.
Good morning, Ms. Weirs. You testified that you worked with Haven Landscaping since you were 14, correct?
Yes.
You worked with Lush Fertilizer as well, right?
Yes.
Lush was not the only fertilizer you worked with. You worked with various other fertilizers and lawn chemicals, correct?
Yes.
You don't have any specialized training in carcinogenic products, correct?
No, I do not.
Were you ever aware that you needed to be wearing proper PPE equipment?
I was aware, but I was not informed that it would have such dire consequences.
Were you wearing long sleeves?
No.
Were you wearing long pants?
No.
Were you wearing gloves?
No.
Were you wearing something to cover your face with?
No.
Were you wearing a mask?
No.
Were you wearing an N95 mask?
No.
Were you using a respirator?
No.
It was recommended on the required warning label to wear these things, right?
It was recommended, not required.
Thank you, Your Honor. That will be all.
Okay, thank you. Switchgrass, you may call your next witness.
Can I ask for a redirect before moving on?
Oh, I apologize. I meant to extend that. Thank you for reminding me. And yes, you may have redirect.
Thank you. Ms. Weirs, could you, I'd like to call attention back to Exhibit 1 again. Could you read what's written underneath the word caution?
Causes eye irritation, avoid contact with eyes or clothing.
Is there anywhere on this label that would suggest the consequences of not undergoing the user safety recommendations would be anything more than mere eye irritation?
No, nowhere is that listed.
Is there anywhere on the label that uses the word cancer or lymphoma?
No, nowhere on the label are either of those words used.
Did your boss ever tell you that using this fertilizer could cause cancer?
No, no one ever told me.
Did anyone let you know that the consequences of foregoing recommendations would go so far as cancer?
No, I had no idea that this could get so far.
Did you know that you could get cancer from using this chemical?
Of course not. If I had, I wouldn't have used it.
Thank you. No further questions.
And will there be recross?
Yes, Your Honor.
Go ahead.
It recommends on these safety labels to be wearing an N95 mask and using a respirator.
Yes,
Correct.
it recommends it.
That will be all. Thank you, Your Honor.
All right, thank you. Now, Switchgrass may call their next witness. Thank you.
Your Honor, at this time, the plaintiff calls Carson Durst to the stand.
All right, thank you. Good morning. You may begin your questions.
Good morning, Ms. Durst. Please state your name, spelling the last for the record.
Carson Durst, Durst.
How do you know the parties in this case, Ms. Durst?
I worked at Lush Fertilizer between the years of 2003 and 2006. Growing up, I was best friends with Charles Doncourt, who's Blake Doncourt's son.
Can you please tell us about your educational background?
I studied at Arizona State University and I graduated with a bachelor's degree in chemical engineering.
What did you do when you graduated?
I hadn't found a job. I told Charles and he told me to apply at Lush. Sure enough, I was hired as an intern on the research and development team.
How did the job go?
After only 3 months, I was promoted to a full-time job as a product development engineer.
What was your biggest assignment at Lush?
I worked on the development of Drufo, a patented bonding agent to keep fertilizers preserved and intact. The work started in 2001, and when I started my employment in 2003, they were working on testing its safety. I was tasked with researching one of the compounds that comprise Drufo.
What did you discover in your research about Drufo?
I discovered an England study which concluded that the particular chemical compound could be carcinogenic in rats.
What did you do with that information?
I documented that study in my lab notebook on June 10, 2003.
Ms. Durst, will you please direct your attention to Exhibit 3?
Certainly.
Let the record reflect that opposing counsel has a copy of Exhibit 3. Your Honor, do you have a copy?
I do, thank you.
What is Exhibit 3, Ms. Durst?
Exhibit 3 is an excerpt from the England study.
Is this a fair and accurate depiction of the excerpt from the study discovered from England?
Yes.
At this time, Your Honor, I would like to admit Exhibit 3 as evidence.
Is there a response? or an objection, excuse me,
No, Your Honor.
then Exhibit 3 will be received.
Thank you, Your Honor. Ms. Durst, could you please describe the contents of Exhibit 3?
It tested whether Drufo or C3NO9P could increase cancer effects in rats.
How was the study conducted?
It was conducted by keeping rats under observation until they naturally died. The C3NO9P was applied to their food and they were monitored until 147 weeks, with the death of the final rat being at 144 weeks.
What does the study in Exhibit 3 conclude?
It concludes that
Your Honor, objection, improper lay opinion.
Okay, is there a response?
Yes, Your Honor. Carson Durst is aware of the study and has read the study. And if you would like, I would be able to lay more foundation to that.
Actually, Ms. Durst went into the substance of the study without objection. So she may complete her testimony regarding the substance of that study. And I understand the question to be for her to relate the conclusion of the study. So for those reasons, the objection is overruled.
Ms. Durst, what does the study in Exhibit 3 conclude?
it concludes that the potential for carcinogenicity in rats who had been exposed to C3NO9P was increased.
Ms. Durst, could you please read the last paragraph of the conclusion?
Yes. This study further underlines the importance of conducting an epidemiologic study which exposure to C3NO9P is monitored in humans beginning in early and or fetal life, particularly given the use of products containing C3NO9P by children, women of childbearing age.
You previously mentioned that you included this study in your lab notebook. Are your lab notebooks reviewed in any way?
Yes, my former boss, Jerry Langley, product manager, typically reviewed them.
What would your product manager do with your reports?
Once everyone's analysis were reviewed, she compiled her findings into a single report, which typically went up to senior management and was reviewed.
What happened after you submitted your lab notebook to Jerry Langley for review?
A few months later in September, right after I was promoted to product development engineer, they announced they were doing another in-house study.
And what did this study test?
Whether Drufo was possibly carcinogenic in humans.
Could you please direct your attention to Exhibit 4? Let the record reflect that opposing counsel has a copy of Exhibit 4. Your Honor, do you have a copy?
I do.
Ms. Durst, would you please explain what Exhibit 4 is?
This is an email from Jerry Langley that was sent to me, Blake Doncourt, and others on September 18th, 2003.
Do you recognize this email?
Yes.
Does this seem like a typical email you would receive from Jerry Langley?
Yes.
And this email has you listed as a recipient?
Yes, ma'am.
Is this a fair and accurate depiction of the email?
Yes, ma'am.
Your Honor, at this time, I would like to admit Exhibit 4 as evidence.
Is there an objection?
No, Your Honor.
Then it will be received.
Thank you. Ms. Durst, will you please explain the contents of this email?
Yes. It states here right in the email, following our lab's June Drufo study, concerns have arisen regarding generalized findings of potential carcinogenic qualities identified in samples produced during a period early in the year.
Does this study mention potential carcinogenic qualities in samples?
Yes.
Does this email also list Blake Doncourt as a recipient?
Yes.
What was your opinion on the defendant's expectations with regard to the new study?
There was a conclusion that management wanted, and we were encouraged to document that in a way that supported the hypothesis.
How did you present your discoveries?
We presented our discoveries and compiled our findings to Jerry Langley and Upper Echelon member Alex Monroe.
What results did your colleagues discover from the study?
One scientist concluded that the chemical Drufo could possibly be linked to non-Hodgkin lymphoma.
Did you receive a study report?
Yes, a month or so later.
And what did it say?
It recommended baking Drufo as part of the production process.
So did the report include any recommendations to make Truffaut safer?
Yes, by baking it.
Did Lush decide to bake Truffaut?
No, they did not.
Based on your experience, do you have an opinion as to why?
was expensive,
Your Honor,
yeah.
objection and proper lay opinion.
Is there a response?
Yes, Your Honor. As a former employee of Lush Fertilizer, the witness is sufficiently aware of upper management and their general customs.
I think under normal circumstances, I might either sustain the objection or I might invite further foundation as to the basis for this opinion, as this opinion would appear to call for, it would appear that this particular opinion is more specific than just general management practices would necessarily account for. However, I will overrule the objection at this time.
Thank you. Ms. Durst, when did things start to go wrong for you at Lush?
I'm sorry, were you, so I overruled the objection. Were you intending to ask the previous question?
Would you like me to repeat the question?
No, I'm sorry. As I understood it, the previous question asked why a particular decision was made by management, why this witness thought a particular decision was made by management. So that was the question I was responding to. Did I misunderstand the question?
No, Your Honor.
Okay. So then that is overruled. You're invited to ask that, to repeat that question.
Okay. Ms. Durst, based on your experience, you have an opinion as to why Lush decided not to bake Drufo?
Because it was expensive and cut into profits.
When did things start to go wrong for you at Lush?
Shortly after that report,
What happened?
my performance reviews started decreasing.
What did you do?
I talked to Blake Doncourt, but he told me he would not intervene.
How did you feel after Blake Doncourt refused to intervene?
I felt betrayed and confused.
What did you do at that point?
I started looking for new jobs and I applied at Terrace Greenery.
What happened next?
I was fired from Lush.
And how did Lush, did you seek another job at that point?
Could you repeat that, please?
Did you seek another job at that point?
Yes, I was already hired at Terrace Greenery.
And how did Lush react to that?
They filed a lawsuit.
What happened with the lawsuit?
Apparently, I had signed a confidentiality agreement. Honestly, I'd forgotten all about it.
Are you employed by Terra Greenery?
Yes.
Prior to coming to court today, did you know the plaintiff Dakota Weirs?
No, we never met.
Why did you agree to testify here today?
Because I believe Drufo in its unbaked form can cause cancer, and Lush knew about it and decided to do nothing.
Thank you, Mr. Durst. No further questions.
Cross-examination.
Yes, Your Honor. Did you work at Lush Fertilizer?
Yes, I did between the years of 2003 and 2006.
And did you leave Lush?
No, they fired me.
And you were fired because your relationship with the Doncourts was affecting your job.
No, I was fired because my performance reviews started getting lower.
Did you have a relationship with the Doncourt family?
Yes, I did.
And were your coworkers suspicious of your position because of your relationship with the Doncourts?
That could be possible, yes.
Did your departure from Lush contribute to you speaking out against their product now?
No,
Did Blake Doncourt hire you?
yes, he did hire me.
And did you receive this email, Exhibit 4, from Jerry Langley?
Yes, I did.
And so you were aware that Drufo could be possibly carcinogenic?
Yes, I was aware.
Thank you, Your Honor. No further questions.
Will there be redirect?
No, Your Honor.
All right, thank you. Then Ms. Durst may step down and Switchgrass may call their next witness.
Your Honor, at this time, I call Dr. Casey Rogers to the stand.
Thank you.
Hello,
Good morning. You may begin your question.
Hello, Dr. Rogers. Can you please state your full name, spelling your last for the record?
Dr. Casey Rogers, Rogers.
Dr. Rogers, can you please tell the jury why you are here today?
I'm here to testify on behalf of the plaintiff, Dakota Weirs, who claims that the chemical Drufo has caused her non-Hodgkin lymphoma.
And can you please talk a little bit about your educational background?
Yes, I earned my Bachelor of Science degree in Agriculture and Chemistry from Colorado State University. I then earned my PhD in Agriculture and Entomology from UC Berkeley.
Dr. Rogers, can you also please tell the jury about your experience relevant to the issues in this case?
I'm currently employed in the Horticulture and Entomology Department at UC Berkeley. Prior to earning my PhD, I worked as a research analyst for a large multinational chemical company. I've made recommendations to companies and regulatory agencies on precautions that should be taken by laborers who are exposed to chemicals. For many years, I've completed extensive research on the potentially harmful long-term effects prolonged exposure to chemicals has on the body, including the chemical at issue in this case, Drufo. My research has been used in litigation and in front of administrative advisory boards, but this will be the first time I've testified as an expert witness in court.
And Dr. Rogers, has any of your research been published?
Yes, I have published 6 research studies, 4 of which are related to Drufo. Of those 4 Drufo-related studies, 2 or more relevant to this case. In 2017, my study on Drufo toxicity and carcinogenicity was published in Biotechnology Information. And then in 2019, I published a study, The Evidence of Human Exposure to Drufo, a review in the Environmentalist.
Dr. Rogers, can you please turn to Exhibits 6 and 7? Your Honor, let the record reflect that opposing counsel does have a copy. Do you have a copy?
Give me just a moment.
Yes.
I believe I do.
Perfect. Dr. Rogers, are you familiar with these exhibits?
Yes.
Can you please identify what each of these exhibits are?
Yes. Exhibit 6 is a copy of my curriculum vitae, and Exhibit 7 is a list of my research publications.
And did you personally prepare these exhibits?
Yes.
And are these exhibits accurate representations of your curriculum vitae and your research publications?
Yes.
Perfect. Your Honor, at this time, I offer Exhibits 6 and 7 for admissions into evidence.
Is there an objection?
Objection, hearsay.
All right. Is there a response?
Yes, Your Honor. I believe these exhibits tend to prove why Mrs. Dr. Casey Rogers is, in fact, an expert witness. In
Okay.
place.
So the objection is to hearsay, which the court would overrule because the declarant of the information in those exhibits is actually here to testify. She is not an out-of-court declarant. Commonly, the objection for a curriculum vitae is cumulative because the information that's in the curriculum vitae has just been testified to, but that wasn't the objection that got made. So the objection is overruled.
Thank you, Your Honor. And also, Your Honor, at this time, I offer Dr. Rogers as an expert in environmental chemistry and toxicity and drufotoxicity and carcinogenicity based on her stated knowledge, skill, experience, training, and education.
Thank you. And is there an objection?
Yes, Your Honor. Permission for a voir dire.
Granted.
You have a PhD in entomology, is that correct?
Yes.
And you have a bachelor's in chemistry, right?
Yes.
And entomology doesn't pertain to the effects on the human body, right?
No, it does not.
And horticulture doesn't pertain to the effects on the human body, right?
No, it does not.
And your Exhibit 6 publication was not peer-reviewed, correct?
Exhibit 6 is my curriculum vitae.
And your Exhibit 7 curriculum vitae was not peer-reviewed, correct?
Exhibit 7 is a list of my publications.
And your publications were not peer-reviewed, correct?
They've all been read over and published to the public.
And you've never been qualified as an expert in any court of law, right?
As I said earlier, this is my first trial as an expert witness.
Well, this person may be an expert on entomology and horticulture, Your Honor. They're not an expert in the field of modern agritech and the carcinogenic effects of drufo on the human body. Therefore, I object. Thank you, Your Honor. That will be all.
Is there a reply to the objection?
Yes, Your Honor. I would first like to start by saying I did not admit my witness as an expert in modern agritech. Also, under Rule 702, testimony by experts, it is obvious that my witness, in fact, provided a I'll just restate the rule. In scientific, technical, or other specialized knowledge will assist the trier of fact to understand the evidence or to determine a fact and issue. A witness qualified as an expert by knowledge, skill, experience, training, or education may testify in form of an opinion or otherwise.
Okay, thank you. The examination conducted of this witness on the voir dire produced information that the jury may use in deciding what weight to give this witness's testimony. But her educational and experience, the qualifications based on her education and experience established that she does have relevant specialized knowledge. If even just the bachelor's degree in chemistry would clear that hurdle. So she will be permitted to testify as an expert witness.
Thank you, Your Honor. Dr. Rogers, why did you begin researching drufo?
Historically, I've always been concerned with many agricultural products, but drufo caught my attention when it first came to market. I believe that drufo was rushed to market without sufficient studies on its safety for human beings. So I decided to conduct my own study to see if there were any adverse health effects in persons exposed to drufo for a prolonged period of time.
And can you please tell the jury about the study you conducted?
Yes, my study included 3 groups of people. One, a control group of people who had never been exposed to drufo. 2, a group of people with occasional exposure to drufo. And 3, a group of people who are exposed to drufo on a daily, almost regular basis.
And what results did you discover from your study related to the cancer in this case?
My study found an increase in serious health diagnoses in those persons who are exposed to drufo. Those persons with prolonged exposure were 10 times more likely to be diagnosed with cancer as compared to the control group. And those with occasional exposure were 5 times more likely to be diagnosed with cancer as compared to the control group.
Perfect. And what other results did you discover through your study?
During my study, I examined ways to mitigate and prevent exposure to Drufo. That study measured both the amount of chemical that was absorbed by the skin and the amount that was inhaled through the respiratory system. I found that those exposed to Drufo were primarily exposed by breathing in the aerosolized product, and to a much lesser extent were also exposed through contact with the skin. Based on these findings, I reviewed options to prevent exposure to this toxic chemical. Short of discontinuing Drufo altogether, wearing long sleeves and pants to avoid contact with the skin will help. And more importantly, with those persons working with the aerosolized product who might breathe in the chemicals, they should wear a medical grade protective mask, such as the N95. The end results of this study related to mitigation and prevention were inconclusive, as workers are not typically provided with protective gear, and there is insufficient time to study the efficacy of protective gear.
Dr. Rogers, what are some of the symptoms of non-Hodgkin lymphoma that you discovered in your study?
Since non-Hodgkin lymphoma affects the immune system, those with lymphoma can become immune compromised and more susceptible to disease and infection. Typical symptoms of non-Hodgkin lymphoma include night sweats, fever, loss of weight, tiredness, anemia, and an itch all over the body.
And Dr. Rogers, can you remind us one more time, how is non-Hodgkin lymphoma typically caused?
Non-Hodgkin lymphoma is not genetic and is usually caused by exposure to an environmental condition such as pesticides.
Can it be cured?
No, it can be controlled, but there is no cure.
Thank you. And final question for you, Dr. Rogers. What is your expert opinion on how Ms. Weirs developed non-Hodgkin lymphoma?
Based on my expertise, research, and studies, my opinion is that there is a high degree of medical probability that Ms. Weirs developed non-Hodgkin lymphoma due to her prolonged exposure to Drufo. The mechanism by which this likely occurred was a collection of lymph-containing cells damaged by exposure to Drufo, or foreign particles from Drufo that entered Ms. Weirs' tissue and diffused through and into the space between her skin and lung tissue. As those damaged cells and particles accumulated in the lymph nodes, their concentration could have overwhelmed the immune function of lymphocyte cells, resulting in metastasizing cancerous masses. From there, lymphoma of any form is nearly inevitable.
Thank you, Dr. Rogers. There are no further questions at this time, Your Honor.
Thank you. Will there be cross-examination?
Yes. Anyone working with Drufo has the risk of it being absorbed into their skin. Is that correct?
If they are not wearing long sleeves or pants, yes.
So when working with Drufo, people should wear long sleeves, right?
Right.
And the long pants.
Right.
And it says this on the label of the bottle, right?
I believe so.
So most importantly, anyone working with an aerosolized version of Drufo or who might breathe in the chemical should wear a medical grade protective face mask, right?
Correct.
Similar to an N95.
An N95 would work well.
And it should cover their mouth and nose, right?
Right.
You're not a doctor, are you?
I am a doctor.
You're not an MD.
I'm not an MD.
You had insufficient time to complete your studies, right?
I had insufficient time to complete the mitigation and prevention study. Yes.
Could that have possibly affected the results of your study?
As the studies are not the same, I cannot say.
You're getting paid to be here, correct?
Correct.
Thank you, Your Honor. That will be all.
Will they redirect?
Yes, Your Honor. Dr. Rogers, you said earlier that your study monitored the study groups very sufficiently, correct?
Correct.
So you did in fact spend enough time to get all the information you needed for your results discovered.
Yes, I would say so.
And can you restate what your job is?
As in my current occupation?
Yes.
Yes, I am a professor in the horticulture and entomology department.
A professor, correct?
Correct.
So you do not work with Lush Fertilizer or anybody who's supposed to show the toxicity of Drufo in the thing. So you did not provide Ms. Weirs with the toxic fertilizer.
No.
Thank you. That is all, Your Honor.
Will there be recross? Oh, I'm sorry, I did not catch the answer. Will there be recross?
No, Your Honor.
Okay, thank you. Are there any additional witnesses for switchgrass?
Oh, no, Your Honor.
All right. So will this conclude the case in chief for switchgrass?
Yes, Your Honor.
All right. Then ryegrass, do you have evidence to present?
Yes, Your Honor.
Then you may call your first witness.
Your Honor, I would like to call Blake Downcourt to the stand.
All right.
Say your name and spell your last for the record.
Blake Downcourt, Doncourt.
Ms. Downcourt, can you tell me where you're currently employed?
Currently, I am the CEO of Lush Fertilizers.
As the CEO, what are your responsibilities?
I'm kind of the person who brought it from like where it was. It used to be a smaller company, and now it's more worldly known.
What product does your company specialize in?
My company specializes in lawn fertilizers.
Speaking of your products, let's talk about that some more. Before your fertilizers are available to the consumers, what safety measures are put in place to make sure they're safe?
We have our own toxicology research and development team, and they go over everything to make sure that everything's safe for our consumers.
Does your company also receive a review from the EPA?
Yes, we do.
Objection, hearsay.
Could you please repeat the question?
Does your company also receive a review from the EPA?
All right. And then what's the reply to the objection?
It's not hearsay because Ms. Downcourt would be the one who would be managing whether the EPA was reviewing their product. So they're just testifying to their knowledge.
All right. The question, as I understand it, was whether this witness received a report from the EPA. That's an action. It's not a statement. So I haven't heard a question yet asking for her to relay the contents. So the objection is overruled.
May I continue?
Please, you may re-ask your question.
Thank you, Your Honor. Does your company also receive a review from the EPA?
Yes, we do.
Who in your company ensures the product is safe?
That would be our toxicology and research and development team.
If you were ever made aware of any product that was unsafe, what would you do?
Me personally, I'm an environmentalist, so I wouldn't want any harm to be done to any human. So I would make sure that there would be all the safety precautions put in place so that the consumers know what is in our products.
Now let's specifically talk about the research and development team. Did Lush Fertilizer have a research and development person named Carson Durst working for you?
We did, but he is no longer employed with us.
What was Carson Durst's job?
Carson was part of our research and development team, so he was one of the ones who went over all the studies and made sure that everything was safe.
Did anyone from your research and development team tell you your fertilizer was unsafe?
No, I was never told of anything being potentially unsafe or harmful to anyone.
Did you ever receive an email from Jerry Langley stating there are risks with the product?
No, in fact, I've never heard of it until today.
Did anyone on your research and development team, including Carson Durst or Jerry Langley, ever express serious concern over the cancer danger of this product?
No, no one had ever voiced their concerns.
To your knowledge, was there any information that would suggest that this fertilizer was unsafe to humans?
No, if I was ever made aware, I would have taken the precautions.
Were you required to put warning labels on your product?
No, there was no science or data to require warning labels on our products.
Were you required to put safety recommendations on your product?
Yes, and we had the
It would appear that we have a freeze of witness Doncourt. I would ask that Ryegrass be have 30 seconds return to their time because that was about the length of time of the freeze, the technical issue. So counsel, you may ask the question for which we had the technical issue.
Thank you, Your Honor. Ms. Doncourt, were you required to put any safety recommendations on your product?
I mean, there was never any big concerns, but we did have safety requirements on our products. Well, recommendations, yes.
Now I want to specifically address baking the fertilizers. Do you bake your fertilizers?
No, we do not.
Why don't you bake your fertilizers?
With such a little concern for anything or little risk, it's not necessary to make our products like out there for consumers because of the such small risk.
Thank you, Your Honor. No further questions at this time.
Cross-examination.
Ms. Doncourt, you are the Chief Executive Officer or CEO at Lush Fertilizer, correct?
Correct.
And you founded Lush Fertilizer as well?
Yes.
And you started the company in the year 2000 and continue to work there to this day?
Objection.
Correct.
Asked and answered.
Repeat the question, please.
You started the company in the year 2000 and continue to work there to this day?
And can you give me a basis for the objection? You said asked and answered. Where was it asked?
Yes, Your Honor. At the very beginning of my direct examination, I asked this question and several questions alike it.
Okay. Then is there a reply to the objection?
Your Honor, this testimony is mainly to provide some background for Ms. Doncourt. And I believe it is very important just to provide that basis and that background.
All right. Well, I agree that the question asks for information that has been testified to. Usually where background information is the issue, attorneys generally get some leeway because typically they will then use that background for their own purposes, which may be different depending on the side that's inquiring into the background. I would note that the asked and answered issue might become important for timekeeping. If there isn't a specific purpose for obtaining the background that's different than the original question, then the question and the answer occupy time. Regardless, for the reasons I stated earlier, I will overrule the objection. So you may re-ask the question.
Thank you, Your Honor. You started the company in the year 2000 and continue to work there to this day?
Correct.
Lush also created Drufo, a chemical found in your fertilizers?
Yes, Drufo was a binding agent.
Are you aware that Dakota Weirs has non-Hodgkin lymphoma?
Yes, I am aware.
Are you also aware that non-Hodgkin lymphoma is not genetic, so Ms. Weirs was exposed to some harmful environment?
Yes.
Others, including Dakota Weirs and Dakota's expert, Casey Rogers, have asserted Drufo is linked to non-Hodgkin lymphoma. Are you aware of this?
I am, but it was never published in any scientific journals.
You claim that Lush Fertilizer conducted extensive research and testing on Drufo before putting it on the market for sale.
Correct.
And you claim that such extensive research and testing did not identify non-Hodgkin lymphoma to persons coming into contact with your fertilizer?
Correct.
There are no warning signs on any of your products with regards to cancer specifically. Are there, Ms. Doncourt?
No, there is not.
You claim there are no warning signs related to cancer because your extensive research and testing showed there was little to no risks to persons using your fertilizers. Is that true?
Yes, that's true.
You claim that your research and development team found nothing in Lush Fertilizer that would require a warning.
Objection. Asked and answered.
Repeat the question, please.
You claim that your research and development team found nothing in Lush Fertilizer that would require a warning.
Again, the court will rely on its previous reasoning that it may be that counsel, in asking a question that has already been asked, is obtaining information that they are reminding the jury about and then perhaps taking in a different direction than the direction that occurred when the question was originally asked. So counsel will be permitted that leeway, and the objection is overruled.
Thank you. You claim that your research and development team found nothing in Lush Fertilizer that would require a warning.
Correct.
If there were known risks from Lush products, would you put warning labels on the packaging?
Yes, immediately.
In fact, if there was a significant, verifiable risk that Drufo could be carcinogenic, you wouldn't have allowed your company to put it on the market, would you?
Correct.
Ms. Doncourt, can you please look at Exhibit 4 in front of you, which has already been admitted into evidence? Jerry Langley was the product manager for Lush Fertilizer, right?
Right.
And you can see that Exhibit 4 is an email from Jerry Langley dated September 18, 2003.
Yes.
And you are listed here as one of the recipients on this email, correct?
I mean, as I can see, yes.
Can you please read the second paragraph of this email out loud for the jury, starting with following our lab's June Drufo study?
Yes. Hold on. Sorry, I'm making sure I have the right thing pulled up. Starting from where?
Starting from following our lab's June Drufo study in the second paragraph.
Following our lab's June Drufo study, concerns have arisen regarding generalized findings of potential carcinogenic qualities identified in samples produced during a period early in the year. So we are reinitiating the study in the coming weeks with fresh product samples. Development engineers and lab techs are also invited to participate in briefings by senior management on target market positions and economic strategies planned for Drufo as the study refresh proceeds. For those who are now working on new product teams, you will not be required to repeat prior Drufo analysis. New technicians will be assigned as appropriate. Nevertheless, I invite all who participated in the initial study to please contact me regarding any testing or materials handling anomalies you observe that may have influenced the outcomes reported, so I can stay aware of and confer with you as needed as we establish parameters for the new Drufo testing exercise.
Thank you, Ms. Doncourt. Are you familiar with the name Dr. Casey Rogers?
Yes.
Are you aware that Dr. Casey Rogers has done a study on Drufo?
Yes, I am aware.
And you are aware that Dr. Rogers and her study asserts that Drufo can cause non-Hodgkin lymphoma?
I have heard, but it was never published in any scientific journals to my knowledge.
Ms. Doncourt, your lawyer will have a chance to ask you further questions. I would ask that you please respond with a yes or no.
I'm going to interject if that instruction was, oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead. My mistake. Could you please repeat the question?
And you are aware that Dr. Rogers and their study asserts that Druho can cause non-Hodgkin lymphoma?
Yes,
You once employed Carson Durst, correct?
correct.
Objection. Asked and answered.
Please repeat the question.
You once employed Carson Durst, correct?
And court will again rely on its previous reasoning that the introductory question, even if it calls for the repetition of information that's previously been inquired into, can help reorient the jury to the topic that the attorney may be deciding to take in a different direction than when the information was previously inquired into. So the objection is overruled.
Thank you, Your Honor. Carson's job was to look for any dangers or risks so that you could follow up on them, correct?
Yes,
Did you turn over access to your email system?
correct.
And if a single email suggesting that Lush was advised of possible risks from Drufo, you would like someone to let you know, wouldn't you?
Yes,
Are you also aware that baking your fertilizer would remove any risk that it was carcinogenic?
yes.
But Lush does not bake their fertilizer.
No, we do not.
Is baking your fertilizer costly?
Yes, it is.
Expensive enough to be deemed too expensive for the little risk it alleviated?
Not necessarily for a company, but it is pricey.
You say baking is simply overkill?
If that's what's in my witness statement.
Yes, it is, Ms. Doncourt. Ms. Doncourt, can you please turn to Exhibit 8 in front of you?
Yes,
You created Exhibit 8 in 2004, right?
correct.
And Exhibit 8 depicts an amortization table you created.
Yes,
At this time, Your Honor, I would like to admit Exhibit 8 as evidence.
Is there an objection?
Objection, Your Honor.
I beg your pardon?
No objection, Your Honor.
Then it will be received.
Exhibit, it showed you could increase your profits by 6% in the first year and an additional 2% per year thereafter if Lush did not bake their fertilizer, right?
yes.
Did Lush need these earnings to pay the capitalists who provided your company with seed funds?
We didn't necessarily need it, but we used it for that.
These investors demanded a good return on their investment, right?
Correct.
You didn't publish your financial findings either, did you?
No, I mean, which company does?
You were divorced, yes?
Correct.
And a judge ordered you to pay your former wife a large quantity of money,
Correct.
but you need enough money to pay your employees to stay with the company as well.
Correct.
You also needed money to pay your ex-wife,
Correct.
and baking your fertilizer is costly.
Correct.
So Lush does not bake their fertilizer even to this day,
No, we do not.
and there is no warning on the packaging regarding cancer specifically to this day.
No, there is not.
If there were to be substantial evidence, would Lush Fertilizer bake their products or include a warning on the packaging regarding cancer specifically?
Yes, we would take any precautions needed.
Thank you, Ms. Doncourt. No further questions.
Will there be redirect?
Yes, Your Honor, just one question.
Go ahead.
Would you compromise the safety of your customer for your profit?
No, I'm an environmentalist, so I wouldn't want any harm. No, I'm an environmentalist, so I wouldn't want any harm to be done to any human.
Thank you, Your Honor. That'll be all.
Redirect? Oh, excuse me, recross?
No, Your Honor.
Thank you. Then this Ms. Doncourt is excused, and Ryegrass may call their next witness.
I apologize. Our next attorney will be Ms. McDowell, and they will be direct examining Ms. Spears.
Looks like we have Attorney McDowell ready. And do we have the witness? It appears that we would have the witness. You may ask your questions.
Yes, I'm here.
Your Honor, the defense would like to call Skylar Weirs to the stand. Please state your name and spell your last for the record.
My name is Skylar Weirs, W-E-I-R-S.
Do you know Dakota Weirs?
I do. They're my twin siblings.
And what is your profession?
I am a journalist for The Rationalist, which is a nonprofit journal.
Specifically, how did you contribute to The Rationalist?
My editor had tasked me.
Objection, relevance.
Please repeat the question.
Specifically, how did you contribute to The Rationalist?
Okay, can you explain the relevance objection a little bit more?
Yes, how does Mr. Weirs' job relate to the case situation?
Is there a reply?
Ms. Weirs' job relates to my question because it's important to lay the foundation of how their work contributed, what their work contributed to The Rationalists to show that they are an expert in what they're talking about.
So the intention is that this witness will be testifying as an expert witness?
Correct.
And this is part of establishing the witness's expertise?
Correct.
Then overruled.
Specifically, how did you contribute to The Rationalist?
My editor had tasked me with writing a series of articles about modern agritech. Drufo was part of that series.
What kind of work have you done?
I have done I've done over a year of extensive research, researching multiple agritech companies, as well as publications from the USDA and the NASDA.
Your Honor, the defense asks the court to qualify Skylar Weirs as an expert in the field of modern agritech, specifically in the area of the causal link between Drufo and cancer. According to the Evidence Code 702, an expert is not required to have a specific degree or training. The expert witness must have proof of that knowledge. This has been established by Skylar Weirs, and therefore they should be allowed to testify as an expert.
Is there an objection to qualifying this witness as an expert?
Yes, Your Honor, lack of personal knowledge. Ms. Weirs has only spent a little bit of time researching compared to other experts in this case, which is sufficiently not enough to prove anything.
Okay. Will that be all in terms of your response?
Yes, Your Honor.
All right. Then I'm not hearing a request to voir dire this witness, so I will rule on the request. Your
Honor.
Yes.
My apologies. I would like to voir dire.
Okay. I did give you an opportunity to supplement your response, and you had declined. You're telling me now you have voir dire?
I would like to, if possible.
All right, I'll permit it.
Thank you, Your Honor. Mr. Weirs, you do not have any college degree, correct?
I do not.
And you are only 20 years old?
I am.
You are also a part-time server at Applebee's.
I am.
Objection, relevance.
Your Honor,
No, I'm just going to go ahead and overrule the objection. I think these questions clearly relate to qualifications. You may proceed.
and when you are not serving at Applebee's, you work as an investigative journalist,
Yes.
but you are not a trained scientist.
No.
You are also not a trained doctor,
No.
and you are not a trained oncologist,
No.
and you are not a trained statistician.
No.
So your knowledge of Drufo is derived from your research done for an article that is published in a rational magazine.
Yes.
Your research included reading publications issued by various agri-tech companies.
Yes.
You don't state which agri-tech companies authored these publications, though.
I don't.
Your research also included reviewing the research studies referenced in the agri-tech companies' publications.
Sorry, could you repeat the question?
Yeah. Your research also included reviewing the research studies referenced in the agri-tech companies' publications.
Sorry, I'm drawing a blank right now. Could you maybe rephrase the question?
Totally. All right. Your research also included reviewing other agri-tech companies' investigative findings.
Yes.
But you haven't said who performed these studies.
I have not.
You also haven't said what these studies were intended to investigate.
Yes. Well, yes.
Or, yes. Okay. You also have not said where these studies were, whether these studies were peer reviewed or not.
I have not stated that.
Your research also included tracking down a wealth of information maintained by the United States Department of Agriculture and the National Association of State Departments of Agriculture.
Yes.
But you do not work for the U.S. Department of Agriculture, right?
No, I do not work for these companies.
And you also do not work for the National Association of State Departments of Agriculture?
No.
And you are not involved in any of the underlying research done to create this wealth of information?
No.
You claim that your knowledge base involves general knowledge plus historical and statistical information.
Could you repeat the question?
Yeah. You claim that your knowledge base involves general knowledge plus historical and statistical information.
Yes.
And claim to have spent almost a year reading and researching regarding Drufo?
Yes.
Your Honor, under Rule 702, I object to Mr. Weirs being qualified as an expert in the field mentioned. Mr. Weirs does not have adequate knowledge, skill, experience, training, or education to be qualified as an expert, and if permitted to testify as an expert, his testimony will not assist the jury, but rather confuse them. Mr. Weirs has not provided an understandable explanation for his qualifications as required in the court's pretrial ruling dated November 1st, 2021.
All right. So the occupation of Mr. Weirs as sounds like a part-time investigative journalist. The work he's done on this particular topic, almost a year of research without specification as to the sources of this research and the reliability and reputation of these sources. It really strains the specialized knowledge requirements of Rule 702. However, this wouldn't be the first time that qualifications have strained the rule, and courts have nonetheless qualified the expert with understanding that the concerns regarding those qualifications are available to the jury to use when deciding what kind of weight to assign the witness's testimony. So the court will go ahead and allow Mr. Weirs to testify as an expert witness.
Permission to continue.
Please.
Are there any harmful substances exclusively in old agritech fertilizers?
Yes, old agritech fertilizers contain glyphosate and arsenic. Mind you, arsenic is a known carcinogenic substance.
How does Lush fertilizer differ from old agritech fertilizers?
First off, Lush fertilizer does not contain arsenic or glyphosate, but it does contain Drufo. Other than that, they are the same.
Based on your research, what effects does Drufo have?
Drufo is a extremely effective bonding agent, which means that less nitrogen and other pollutants will be absorbed into the environment, which also means that the that fertilizers that use Drufo will require less times of applying. You will need to apply Drufo less, or fertilizers that contain Drufo less from 6 to 7 times a year with normal fertilizers to only once or twice a year with fertilizers that contain Drufo.
Specifically, why are those effects Drufo has important?
Like I said before, with Drufo significantly reduces the amount of times a person has to apply the fertilizer to whatever they're fertilizing, from 6 to 7 times a year with old agritech fertilizers to only once or twice a year with Drufo.
What would you tell someone who is a critic of Lush fertilizer?
Sorry, could you repeat the question?
What would you tell someone who is a critic of Lush fertilizer?
I would have heavy skepticism of them, because even though Drufo is by definition a pesticide and as such a poison, the benefits it gives severely outweigh the negatives it can induce. Granted,
Objection narrative.
I will overrule the objection.
May I continue?
You may continue.
Drufo. Oh, sorry. Could you repeat the question?
Based on what you reviewed, did you form any conclusions?
Yes. Drufo's benefits severely outweigh its negatives. Provided someone wears the proper safety equipment, the benefits of being exposed to known carcinogenic substances like potassium and phosphorus are significantly reduced because of the amount of times Drufo is required to be applied.
Thank you, Your Honor. That will be all.
Is there cross-examination? I'm sorry, you put yourself on mute. There you go.
Yes, Your Honor.
Go ahead.
Mr. Weirs, you admit to being a gambler.
I am.
You are still in a hole from bets you made a few years ago during March Madness?
Yes.
Your parents used to help you out financially before your mother died?
They did.
But now your father's cut you off.
He has.
You believe you are a beneficiary of your father's will?
I am.
And you are aware that your sister's medical treatment will not be cheap?
I am.
And do you believe that your father will help pay for your sister's medical treatment?
I do believe so.
You write for The Rationalist.
I do.
And you are paid to write articles for The Rationalist?
I am.
The Rationalist is a nonprofit organization devoted to promoting scientific skepticism and resisting the spread of pseudoscience, superstition, and irrational beliefs.
That is correct.
You claim that Lush Fertilizer has been the target of pseudoscientific mass hysteria and conspiracy theories.
It has.
You would never claim that there are no risks from modern agricultural products, though.
Yes, I would never claim something like that.
Virtually every commercial pesticide has several well-known carcinogens,
That is correct.
such as the ones you mentioned earlier.
Yes.
But those pesticides and herbicides are, by definition, poison, correct?
Yes.
There's probably never going to be a safe chemical fertilizer then.
Yes, there's never going to be a safe chemical fertilizer.
That is all. No further questions, Your Honor.
Will there be redirect?
Yes, Your Honor.
Go ahead.
What was your intent for writing at the rationalist?
My intent was to, first of all, I was required to write it by my editor. So, second of all, I wanted to disprove sorry, I'm blank on the word. I wanted to disprove the skepticism that has been brought onto Lush Fertilizer and their products.
Thank you, Your Honor. That will be all.
Will there be recross?
Yes, Your Honor.
Go ahead.
Mr. Weirs, you just said that you wanted to demote scientific skepticism, but earlier when I just asked you this question, you just admitted to working for a nonprofit organization that's devoted to promoting that skepticism.
Yes, I misspoke. My apologies.
That is all. No further questions, Your Honor.
All right, thank you. Mr. Weirs is excused, and Roy Grass may call their next witness.
Thank you, Your Honor. I would like to call Dr. Devin Williams to the stand.
Good. It's still good morning, so you may begin your questions.
Please state your name and spell your last for the record.
Devin Williams, Williams.
Thank you. And what is your current profession?
I am currently the lead toxicology research and development at Lush Fertilizer.
And how long have you been employed there?
For 10 years now.
What degrees and certifications do you currently hold?
I have, I have a PhD in toxicology and pharmacology, and I also have a post-PhD in pharma toxicology, and I have 4 certifications in 4 separate states.
And where did you attain these?
My PhD is from CSU. The 4 certification is from Colorado, Wyoming, Utah, and New Mexico.
And could you please explain what toxicology and pathophysiology is?
Yeah, so toxicology is the study of adverse effects of chemicals on living systems, and the means to ameliorate, or in layman terms, to prevent effects.
And does your research include understanding how the human body is affected by external substances?
Yes, it does.
And could you please take a look at Exhibit 9?
Yes.
Your Honor, do you have a copy of this?
I do.
Thank you. And could you please explain what Exhibit 9 is?
Exhibit 9 is my curriculum vitae.
Your Honor, the defense would like to enter Exhibit 9 into evidence.
Is there an objection?
No objection, Your Honor.
Then Exhibit 9 is received.
Your Honor, the defense would also like to qualify Dr. Devin Williams as an expert in toxicology and pathophysiology. According to Rule 702, an expert must have knowledge, expertise, experience, training, or education to be qualified as a witness, and Dr. Devin Williams has all these traits and thus should be qualified.
Is there an objection to qualifying Dr. Williams as an expert witness?
No objection.
Then Dr. Williams may testify as an expert witness.
Thank you. Were you on the chair of Lush Fertilizer's ethics committee?
Yes.
So what makes Drufo so special?
Drufo helps combine the fertilizer to the plants, which leads to less fertilizer being stray, which in turn leads to less nitrates leaving the plants.
Wow. And has the use of Drufo been proven to increase the chances of getting non-Hodgkin's lymphoma?
No, it has not.
And what would a valid study need to include to prove what the plaintiff claims?
A valid study would include two groups of people who both need to have either contact with Drufo and one group without contact with Drufo.
Do you know Dr. Casey Rogers?
Yes, I do.
Are you familiar with their study regarding Drufo?
I am.
Was the study peer-reviewed?
It was not.
Why is peer review important in the world of science?
It's important because if it's not peer reviewed, it could just be a one-off study with inconclusive evidence for their answer.
And has Dr. Rogers' study been replicated?
It has not.
And why is it important for a scientific study to be replicated?
It could just be a fluke of a study.
Thank you, Dr. Williams. No further questions, Your Honor.
Cross-examination.
Yes, Your Honor. Good morning, Dr. Williams. You're an employee of the defendant, Lush Fertilizer, correct?
Yes.
You lead the toxicology research and development labs for the defendant, Lush Fertilizer?
Your Honor, objection asked and answered.
Response.
This question is leading to another question and is serving as background for that question.
Commonly, especially on cross-examination, a question that's been asked that repeats information obtained on direct examination will help reorient the jury back to that topic, as oftentimes cross-examination does not follow the same timeline as direct examination. And so again, the objection will be overruled, and you may repeat the question.
Thank you. You lead the toxicology research and development labs for the defendant, Lush Fertilizer?
I do.
And you're the chair of the ethics committee at Lush Fertilizer?
I am.
You started your career with Lush Fertilizer nearly a decade ago?
Yes,
And you've led the toxicology labs for 7 years?
I have.
You admit to having financial bias in the outcome of the case?
Well, I am employed by Lush Fertilizer, but my foremost thing is considering the effects of the products before I send them out.
I believe on page 46, lines 118 through 119, you do admit to having financial bias in the outcome of the case in your statement.
Oh, I'm sorry, I misspoke. That is correct.
Thank you. Is it correct that when you joined Lush, around 50% of the original Drufo development team had already moved on to other ventures outside of the company?
That's correct.
Your initial role with Lush was to fill in as a technician because because the turnover with employees was beginning to impact testing timeliness?
Your Honor, objection relevance.
I'm going to need to hear that question again, please.
Your initial role with Lush was to fill in as a technician because the turnover with the employees was beginning to impact testing timeliness?
I'm going to overrule the objection, although the question has so many parts to it that it's hard to sort of figure out what his yes or no response to is which part of the question, or however many parts of the question that response will apply to. So I'm going to overrule it. But one more time, I'm going to ask you to ask the question, given all of its parts.
Your initial role with Lush was to fill in as a technician because the turnover with employees was beginning to impact testing timeliness?
Yes, did start as a technician.
Lush's CEO, Blake Doncourt, needed you to keep Drufo products industry leading, environmentally aware, and cost effective, correct?
Yes,
Is it also correct that Drufo is not only banned in France, but also the entirety of the European Union?
that is true. It's banned because of the nitrate.
I'd like
level.
to keep it to a yes or no answer to the question. Thank you.
Yeah.
You could have fought the European Union's decision to ban Drufo, correct?
I have.
You could have, I mean.
Oh, yes, we could have.
But Lush Fertilizer didn't fight it because it was just easier to manufacture a line of products without Drufo for sales in those countries.
Yes.
However, now Lush is working to receive a reconsideration of the approval from the EU, correct?
That is correct.
And is it true that the outcome of this lawsuit could impact the European Union's reconsideration?
It could.
And if the outcome of this lawsuit is that Drufo causes cancer, that would create a whole host of new bureaucratic roadblocks with the European Union?
If it does, yes.
Thank you, Dr. Williams. No further questions.
Will there be redirect?
Yes, Your Honor. Dr. Devin Williams, could you explain why Drufo is banned in the EU?
Drufo was banned in the EU because it contained nitrates. In the EU, you can't have nitrates in fertilizer. And because of Drufo, in like the environment, if you're gonna put it out there, it's still gonna create nitrates, even though its main purpose is try to lessen the amount of nitrates in the fertilizer.
So does it have anything to do with carcinogens?
No, it does not.
Is it banned solely for reasons related to its nitrogen content in relation to algae?
It is.
Objection, sorry, I was objecting to that question. It wasn't relating to what we spoke about in the cross-examination.
So the objection, as I understand it, is exceeding the scope of direct examination.
Yes.
May I hear the question again, please?
Is Drufo banned solely for reasons related to its nitrogen content in relation to algae?
It may be the case that a specific part of a generalized topic wasn't addressed in direct examination, but if the generalized topic was raised, then cross-examination on a specific issue that wasn't part of the direct is still within the scope. So overruled.
Thank you.
Thank you, Your Honor. I have no further questions.
Well, it's overruled. So number one, you can ask the question. Again, if you'd like the answer to be part of the record, you may conclude your examination if you wish, but you have that permission to get an answer to that question.
Okay. Then Dr. Williams, is it banned solely for the reasons relating to its nitrogen content in relation to algae?
Yes, it is.
All right. Thank you, Your Honor. No further questions.
Will there be redirect?
No, Your Honor.
This witness is excused. And is there additional witnesses or evidence for ryegrass?
No, Your Honor.
Then switchgrass, you may proceed with your closing argument.
Can I reserve time remaining for a rebuttal?
That'll be granted.
Thank you, Your Honor. Your Honor, opposing counsel, members of the jury, we're here today to determine whether Lush Fertilizer is responsible and therefore liable for the plaintiff Dakota Weir's damages due to her non-Hodgkin lymphoma. Let me know. These are the words of Lush Fertilizer's CEO, Blake Doncourt. Let her know if there was a single email suggesting that Lush knew about the dangers of Drufo, a carcinogenic ingredient in their fertilizer. The evidence presented today has shown that several individuals let her know about the dangers of the product and that they also let her know that baking Drufo would alleviate the problem. Let's go through what you've heard today. First, you heard from the plaintiff, Dakota Weirs. Ms. Weirs told you how she had been diagnosed with non-Hodgkin lymphoma and how it has ruined her life and stolen her future. She told you how she had worked as a landscaper at age 14 using the fertilizer. She told you how she discovered that the ingredient Drufo in Lush fertilizer caused her very disease. She told you how there were no warnings on the labels. She also told you how she has a twin who does not have the disease and that it is caused by environmental and not hereditary causes. Next, you heard from Carson Durst. Ms. Durst told you how she began working at Lush Fertilizer and was assigned to test the safety of Drufo. She told you that she had found a study concluding that Drufo was a carcinogenic in rats. She explained how she documented the study and informed her supervisor, Jerry Langley. She let them know. She explained that they then did an in-house study and were told that they needed to support the conclusion that management wanted. In the meeting to discuss their findings, a scientist expressed concerns that Drufo contained a carcinogen and was linked to non-Hodgkin lymphoma. She let them know and was told to, quote, keep it within the walls. She told you how they discovered that baking Drufo would make it safe and let them know. But the baking process was expensive and never implemented. She told you how she started to get bad performance reviews after she let them know of the dangers. She went directly to Blake Doncourt, but she dismissed her concerns. Finally, you heard from our last witness, Dr. Casey Rogers, who told you she had been researching harmful effects of chemicals for years. Dakota Weirs is not the only person who developed non-Hodgkin lymphoma after exposure to Drufo. She told you how her study found an increase in non-Hodgkin lymphoma in those participants who used Drufo. She made recommendations to reduce exposure and the related risks. She let them know. After you heard from our witnesses, you heard from the defense witnesses. Blake Doncourt told you that she did know that baking the fertilizer would remove any risks that it was carcinogenic, but that the baking process was simply too expensive to, in her own words, quote, it was too expensive, and in her own words, it was, quote, overkill. They let her know, and she did nothing. You also heard from Miss Weirs' twin, Skylar Weirs, who claimed to be an expert. Do not believe their testimony. Skylar Weirs has shown to be unreliable and biased against their twin. Last, you heard from Dr. Devin Williams, who is biased because he works for Lush. He admitted he has financial bias in this case. Ladies and gentlemen, we have shown today by the preponderance of the evidence that it is more likely than not that the use of Lush fertilizer containing Drufo caused Dakota Weirs' cancer. Let me remind you that to rule in favor of my client, you don't need to believe that Drufo is 100% the cause of her illness, but merely that there is only a 51% or greater chance that their product caused her illness. Today, we have proven all the elements needed to rule in favor of my client. The defendant manufactured a product containing Drufo. 2, that the defendant failed to exercise reasonable care to persons who would be expected to use their product. And 3, that Dakota Weirs was one of those persons Lush should have reasonably expected to use their product. And 4, that Ms. Weirs had damages caused by Lush's negligence. Let me know. That's exactly what happened in this case. Although Blake Doncourt and Lush Fertilizer were repeatedly made aware of the potential risks of Drufo in its unbaked form, they decided to prioritize profit over safety, which resulted into the harm of my client, Dakota Weirs. You must let them know by ruling that Lush Fertilizer is responsible for Ms. Weirs' damages. Thank you.
Thank you. Ryegrass may proceed with their closing argument.
Thank you, Your Honor. Your Honor, members of the jury, this is a tragic situation in which Dakota Weirs has non-Hodgkin lymphoma and believes it was caused by Lush Fertilizer in their product. But the fact is, Lush did not cause this horrible cancer to Dakota Weirs. Lush prides itself on not only being an environmentally friendly company, but a company who would not put a product out that could potentially cause cancer. There is no evidence to support that Lush Fertilizer gave Dakota Weirs their non-Hodgkin lymphoma. I'm going to review and break down the testimonies and the evidence that was given in this case so that you can clearly see that Lush Fertilizer is not liable for Dakota Weirs' cancer. We heard Dakota Weirs testify that they worked at a landscaping company since they were 14. Not only did they work with Lush fertilizer, but a variety of different fertilizers, which they were constantly exposed to. Dakota Weirs testified that they were given safety protocols, and they didn't follow these safety protocols because of a variety of reasons. We also heard testimony from the plaintiff's expert witness, Dr. Casey Rogers, who failed to show or prove that Drufo caused cancer. While attempting to test the safety of Drufo, Dr. Casey Rogers conducted one test to show that it causes non-Hodgkin lymphoma. There were 3 groups, one control group, one group who was exposed to Drufo on occasion, and the other group of farmers and laborers who were exposed constantly to fertilizers. The farmers and laborers developed the non-Hodgkin lymphoma. If they were constantly working with fertilizers, what's to say it wasn't a different chemical and a different fertilizer that caused this illness? But there was never a second test or another experiment. So how could the results of this test be reliable? It can't, because Dr. Rogers' testing could have easily had different results had they conducted more than one test with another group of people. The plaintiff's second witness, Carson Durst, testified that they were a previous employee who worked with Lush Fertilizer on the research and development team. While with the research and development team, never found any dangers with Drufo or it being potentially harmful. Carson Durst even testified that they didn't have access to all the data from the study Lush did on Drufo. Then you heard testimony from Blake Downcourt, the CEO of Lush Fertilizers. They had a research and development team to test the products and make sure that there were minimal risks with the products. They testified that the research and development team never alerted that there were severe risks with the product. Blake Downcourt also testified that Lush had their product reviewed by the EPA and it was deemed safe. Skylar Weirs was an expert witness who testified about the benefits to Drufo to rivers and lakes. Skylar Weirs testified that they had done research about Drufo and found that it helps reduce the nitrogen that goes into our lakes and our rivers, which shows that Drufo is not harmful. The final witness that testified was Devin Williams, the lead toxicologist for Lush. They were researching the fertilizers and the risks associated with them. They testified that they conducted a series of tests and found that Drufo was safe and not harmful. Devin Williams' whole job was to make sure that these products were safe for the consumers, and that is exactly what they did. Devin Williams also testified that if you take a large group of people, a small amount will develop non-Hodgkin lymphoma, whether they've been exposed to the product or not. The plaintiff's 3 witnesses did not provide any testimony that shows Lush Fertilizer caused Dakota Weirs cancer. Any one of the fertilizers besides Lush that Dakota Weirs was exposed to at the landscaping company could have caused cancer. The hard truth is, it could have been prevented had Dakota Weirs followed the established safety protocols. Then you had the disgruntled ex-employee of Lush, who out of anger and resentment makes outlandish claims without having the data to back the claims. Dr. Rogers presents baseless claims that Drufo is harmful based on one experiment, which was substandard at best. They used a group which was routinely being exposed to all kinds of different fertilizers and chemicals. The defense's 3 witnesses all testified that Lush Fertilizer was safe. This was not an opinion, but a fact based on solid evidence and research, not only done by Lush, but also done by independent parties as well. The facts are clear. There's no evidence to prove that Lush Fertilizer caused Dakota Weirs non-Hodgkin lymphoma. Lush is truly sorry for what is happening to Dakota Weirs. No one deserves to go through something as horrible as cancer. But Lush Fertilizer is not to blame for that cancer. We ask you members of the jury to review the case and find that Lush is not liable for Dakota Weirs cancer. Thank you.
All right, so I believe Switchgrass has about 35 seconds or so remaining. Did Switchgrass intend to use that time to make a rebuttal closing?
Yes, Your Honor.
Can we have clarification how much time it does remain?
I have 30 seconds.
All right, well, then you may continue. You may proceed with your rebuttal.
Thank you. Today, we have proven that Lush was aware of the potential dangers and ignored them. 14-year-old Dakota Weirs should have been given more warnings and cautions to issues beyond mere eye irritation and instead for something far beyond that, cancer. The CEO, Blake Downcourt, had clear liability and responsibility to our plaintiff, Miss Dakota Weirs.
All right. Does that conclude your rebuttal?
Yes, that does.
All right. Then that would conclude these proceedings. And under normal circumstances, we would give instructions to the jury. Actually, I probably would have given instructions to the jury before closing and allowed them now, sent them back to deliberate. But instead, you folks are finished for this round. I appreciate so much your preparation and your contributions. Thank you so much for your time and your effort on this. Let me ask the jurors, do you need a few minutes to complete your assessments?
Yes, Your Honor. Also,
Yes, Your
can
Honor.
I ask Switchgrass to repeat their names? I didn't get all of them.
So I'm sorry, what was the question again? There was feedback.
Can I ask Switchgrass to repeat their names? I did not get all of them.
Would you like us to reintroduce ourselves?
Yes, please, if that's okay with Magistrate Zay.
Absolutely.
My name is Lucy Glenn. Today I conducted the cross against Dr. Devin Williams, the direct with Ms. Dakota Weirs, and the closing statement.
Thank you.
My name is Ariana Valdez. Today, I presented the direct examination of Dr. Casey Rogers and the cross-examination of Skylar Weirs.
Thank you.
My name is Sophia Rodriguez. Today, I presented the opening statement, the direct examination of Carson Durst, and the cross-examination of Blake Doncourt.
Thank you.
My name is Addison Ward, and I was Dakota Weirs.
My name is Natalie Haupt, and I was Dr. Casey Rogers.
You were who, I'm sorry?
Natalie Haupt, Dr. Casey Rogers.
Got it, thank you.
My name is Jagan Casper, and I am Carson Durst.
Thank you all very much. That's all I needed.
All right. So while the jurors are taking the time to make their to finish their assessments, Ms. Sharma, I have actually two questions for you. I'm glad you're on. First, do I participate in the selection of the witness and the attorney?
You do not.
Okay. And then secondly, do we have a little bit of time for just some comments?
Yes, yes, we do. And we very much appreciate feedback from the jurors as well as yourself, Magistrate Zahi, for comments.
Good. Well, while they're completing their assessments, I'm super impressed with everyone, and you are not only prepared and skilled, but you're also challenged. It's very difficult to perform functionally under these circumstances, under COVID circumstances, and so that additional challenge just makes your accomplishments that much more impressive. I'm just going to make a couple of comments on specific portions. I would compliment Ryegrass's opening. I really like the theme of "It's not your fault" or "It's not their fault," and I like the repetition of the theme at the beginning of the opening statement and at the end of the opening statement. I would suggest repeating that theme in closing argument. You want that theme resonating in the jury's head when they go back to deliberate. And best way to do that is not only at the beginning, but also at the end, because those are the points at which jurors are most likely to remember what's coming at them. I would compliment Dr. Rogers on her testimony. You have the demeanor of an expert, and you have good verbal pacing. I thought that was a nice cross of Dr. Rogers. Excellent breakdown of that protective gear one by one. You want that rhythm going, you want that resonating. I additionally thought the cross of the witness, the other Weirs. I'm forgetting the first names. The Weirs who testified for ryegrass. Excellent closed-ended questions. Almost all of your questions were closed-ended, and that's what you're looking for in a cross-examination. You want to make sure they don't have room to say anything other than yes or no. The recross, also excellent spot. Really thought it was nice that you followed up with the recross. Often I've judged a lot of these, and a lot of people don't use the opportunity for recross. And I think it can sometimes be a missed opportunity, and you did not miss that opportunity. I also appreciated the cross-examination of witness Williams. Again, very much closed-ended questions, which are so important in cross-examination. I would encourage you to break your questions down. One fact per question for them to say yes or no to. If there's more than one fact in there, and when they say yes or no, we're not 100% sure what it is they're agreeing with or disagreeing with. There was another point where this breakdown of all of the protective measures that the plaintiff could have taken that would have helped prevent the absorption of the chemical. I think that could have been developed even more. You didn't wear the protective mask, did you? Is a great question, and it's great not to bunch that up. Like you didn't wear the protective mask or the long pants or the long sleeves or any of those things. Take all of those parts, make them one question, but then put in some extra questions in there too. You knew that you had to wear a protective mask. Well, the label says you have to wear a protective mask. You read that label, so therefore you knew you had to wear a protective mask. You did not wear the protective mask. The label says you have to have long sleeves. You knew that you had to wear long sleeves. You did not wear long sleeves. It just continues to build the rhythm and continues to just punctuate those points. Those are my thoughts. If the jurors have any thoughts that they would like to share, why don't we start with Mr. Fickle? I'm sorry, you're on mute. Well, let me. Oh,
I'm sorry.
Mr. Fickle, if you could introduce yourself a little bit first and then go ahead and make your comments.
My name is Bruce Fickle. I'm an attorney in Berthoud. I agree with your assessment of the presentations and the cross-examination. I thought they did a great job. I thought counsel in the final argument, Ms. Is it Barrett? Emily Barrett did a great job minimizing the impact of the plaintiff's presentation. And I think openings were both excellent.
Thank you. Ms. Ryan? Can you tell us a little bit about yourself too?
Yes, I am currently a paralegal at the county attorney's office. I've been a paralegal for almost 17 years, and I've scored a mock trial, I don't know, for many years too, I can't remember. But given the, all the wrenches thrown into it for this Zoom situation, you guys all seemed pretty prepared. And I feel like it's just all extra work. So I just wanted to tell you all, great job. And I always enjoy watching you guys. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Vertigar, did you want to tell us a little bit about yourself and share any comments?
Yes, thank you, Your Honor. My name is Cyril Vertigar. I am one of the city attorneys here in Fort Collins, and I'm on the CBA committee that drafted this case problem. So it's actually particularly fun to see it come to life. In particular, I'll start with the witnesses on that point. We spent a lot of time coming up with red herrings as well as appropriate facts that could influence the way the problem turns out. And we put those facts in the words of the witnesses. And I just want to commend the witnesses in this round. You really did embody those characters in many ways beyond what we imagined on the committee. So I think you definitely took on the charge there and brought those characters to life. With the attorneys, one of the most important skills in working with a witness is to develop rapport and control. And I think we saw some great examples of that during the round here today, including maintaining control in your rhythm, even after interruptions through objections. I think sometimes objections can be made strategically to try to interrupt the flow of an attorney. But what we saw here were a lot of good, a lot of instances where the attorneys returned to their rhythm and the facts were able to be brought back up, and there really weren't holes in the story that arose from the interruption. So that's great. On cross-examination, I want to point out that you can't always control what a witness may say, but you can influence the weight that the fact finder will put on that information and that testimony. And I think we also saw some great examples of how you on cross can influence that weight by either asking questions or getting into a line of questioning that kind of establishes the witness may have a bias or may not really be as thorough in their analysis that went into their testimonies. So overall, very impressive. I think it took a lot of work to get here, and you all should be proud. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much. Again, compliments to all of you. Hope you get a little bit of time to relax and have a nice lunch. And Ms. Sharma, is there anything else that we should be doing here today?
Scorers, just please remember to hit submit. And I hope you noted that this is round 3. But I think that is it for this round. Thank you, everybody. Thank you, students. Thank you, scorers. Thank you, Magistrate Zahi, for being a part of this. And our next round check-in will start around 1:30 for the scorers teams. The next round matches will be posted probably within about 45 minutes. And please start checking into the courtroom you're assigned to. They're in sequential order for the courtrooms at about 1:45. Thank you.
Take care.